Some good, some bad, some sad, some happy, all over the place. But lots to touch on, lots in the news this past week. So first thing I want to touch on is the unfortunate, tragic passing of a legend in hockey, not even a player, but Walter Gretzky, Wayne Gretzky's father, um, who has done a significant amount for hockey. Through his son's career, Wayne's career, and just for the past 40, 50 years or so, he's very, very involved. Um, Obviously, teaching Wayne to play, and then staying involved with youth hockey throughout Canada. Not really as well known. His story is not really as well known, I'd say, in America here, where I live. But among hockey fans, of course, he is still a legend, and there's even a debate among many people about whether or not he should be inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame as a builder, just for his impact on the game. So, um, Walter Gretzky, passing away on March 4th, at the age of um, 83. So, very, very unfortunate. Wayne shared some very touching and moving words at the funeral. Highly recommend watching that video. He spoke very highly, of course, about his father. But Walter Gretzky, passing away. But other than that, the news is mostly positive this week. Something else that I would not say is positive, certainly not tragic like a death or anything, but Tom Wilson, again, seems like we go over this again, accused of a dirty hit, this time with a 7-game suspension, a massively impactful suspension because he is one of the better players on Washington, and the 7-game suspension, which is really more like 10 games in comparison to what it would be in a normal length, a season of the normal length of 82 games. But Tom Wilson, I mean, this hit really was not even that dirty, but it was dirty enough combined with his reputation, apparently, to warrant 7 games. When I first saw it, I thought it should be about two or three, but Tom Wilson, it was a check to the head of Brandon Carlo, or sorry, a check not to the head of Brandon Carlo, but a check that was it did not look good, certainly, and did not help that Carlo went to the hospital. Fortunately, Carlo is not seriously hurt, but if you watch the hit, you do see that Wilson stays on his feet, and the direct point of contact is the shoulder, kind of like the shoulder armpit area, and it doesn't look great. But if you stay on your feet and direct point of contact is not the head, um, it's kind of tough to warrant a 7-game suspension in my eyes. Um, but the Department of Player Safety, of course, um, released a video as they always do for these suspensions, explaining the decision, explaining why. So, according to the Department of Player Safety, it was deemed, quote, that Carlo was in a defenseless position when he was hit by Wilson, uh, with the puck bouncing at Carlos' skates as he attempts to locate it. Wilson approaches from outside his field division and delivers a high, yeah, and delivered a high, hard hit to the head of Carlo. So, it is tough because based on that explanation, it doesn't really seem like enough to warrant a 7-game suspension, as well as obviously he's forfeiting $311,000, so a substantial amount. But based, if we break down the Department of Player Safety's um, explanation, it is let's see. So Wilson approaches from outside his field of vision. Wilson can't really control that. It was not a hit from behind. It's not like he came directly at him from the back. Um, he can't really control. Carlos' head is on a swivel. He can't really control where he's looking. Um, and it says he delivers a high, hard hit that makes direct contact with Carlos' head, driving it violently into the glass and causing an injury. And that does sound awful, but that's not exactly what happened because the direct point of contact is the shoulder armpit area, as I said, and it was only going to follow through afterwards that his head hit into the glass. So I do think, I mean, and this is not a secret by any means. The main thing is that it's Tom Wilson, and everybody knows Tom Wilson, dirty player. That's the reputation he has, multiple suspensions in the past. If this was a completely random person with no suspension history or anything, it's probably nothing. I don't think. Maybe 1 game, maybe. But Tom Wilson just has such a reputation that he keeps getting these. He's not going to get the benefit of the doubt at all. And this is the fifth suspension of his career. The last one is actually probably his stupidest in my opinion because it was preseason, a hit to the head of Oscar Sundqvist. Um, and because the suspension is over 6 games, Tom Wilson had the option to appeal to a neutral arbitrator, um, but he chose not to. Um, it's assumed that they would hold the appeal so long that he wouldn't be able to play for a while anyway. Like they would hold the suspension long enough that it would be 7 games anyway, so it's really not going to help him get back in the lineup quicker. But for Washington, who, by the way, is still like doing very well. Like it's not like they desperately need him to make a playoff push or anything. Um, After beating Philadelphia yesterday, a very impressive win in Philadelphia. Caps are just 2 points back of the Islanders for the division lead. And the Islanders, I mean, nobody's catching them lately. They still haven't lost a regulation game on home ice. 7-2 in the 7-2-1 in the last 10, 5-game winning streak. So the Caps still home ice advantage in the playoffs as of now for that first round. But that Tom Wilson hit is going to a blow to them because his replacement in the lineup, the Dutchman Daniel Sprong, who has had, played some games around the league, played in Pittsburgh for a while, been up a couple times with Washington, but he's no Tom Wilson. So as the Caps have a few very important games coming up, the Devils, the Flyers again, and then monumental game against the Islanders. That will probably at that point that will be March 16th. That'll be probably the top 2 teams in the division facing off. So very important game coming up for them at that point. But after this win yesterday versus the Flyers, Caps won 3-1 with Ilya Samsonov making his return. He's played spectacular in place of Vitek Vanacek, who both of them, that's just a fantastic tandem right now. Jennings potential at this point. But that was obviously the first game Wilson missed. So he's also going to miss Tuesday's game against the Devils, Thursday and Saturday, both in Philadelphia, and Monday in Buffalo. And then, of course, that big game against the Islanders the next day, Tuesday at home. It's a second round of a back-to-back in different cities for the Caps against the first-place Islanders. And then Caps have back-to-backs that Friday and Saturday against New York, against the Rangers. Wilson will be back for the second one of those. So 1-0 so far. At these 7 games, if the Caps can pick up maybe like 10 points without him, that would be a success, I think. But moving on from Tom Wilson, just checking around the league news. Of course, Ovechkin scoring yesterday in this game against Philadelphia, and less than about a year ago when it was kind of at its peak, was Ovechkin can he catch Gretzky? I think a lot of people have kind of thought maybe he can at this point just because losing all these games due to COVID, plus it was going to be a very tall task anyway, makes it tough. But Ovechkin actually passed Steve Yzerman yesterday for most road goals of all time, or second most road goals of all time behind Gretzky. So he's still breaking records and moving up the chart pretty quickly with his 363rd road goal yesterday. Also yesterday, Keith Yandle playing his 1,000th game. One of the stars of those Coyotes teams at the beginning of the past decade with Shane Doan and Antoine Vermette and Ed Jovanovski and Ilya Bryzgalov playing almost 600 games in Phoenix, and then to the Garden with the Rangers as well as the Panthers. So Keith Yandle playing 1,000 games. I mean, he's been a stellar defenseman in the league for over 10 years, and he's deserving of it. So Keith Yandle in his playing his 1,000th game, but also just take a look at the standings here. After one thing, Toronto winning any division, like the biggest difference between first and second in any division is by far Toronto, 7 points up in the Canadian North Division on Winnipeg. Winnipeg really making a jump up to second though, as they're 7-3 in the last 10, being able to hop over Edmonton and Montreal. Montreal kind of in a bit of a tailspin since firing Claude Julien in favor of Dominique Deschamps. They're barely clinging on to that last playoff spot, and they're lucky Calgary upset by Ottawa yesterday. or else Montreal will be tied for that last playoff spot. But right now, Toronto with 38, Winnipeg with 31, Edmonton with 30, Montreal with 28, and Calgary is right on Montreal's heels. I at this point, Calgary's 3 points back, but I would pick Calgary to leap over Montreal because Montreal just is kind of all over the place. And the season almost halfway done for these guys. Calgary, that's one thing Montreal does have is they have 3 games in hand. Calgary, Montreal's played 23, Calgary's played 26. But there's enough time left. I think Calgary is the better team, and they obviously also having just replaced their coach. Daryl Sutter taking over for his second stint and the fourth Sutter brothers stint in Montreal as head coach, or in Calgary, excuse me. And the Flames, 3-5-2 in their last 10, not playing great, but it's going to be an ugly finish for Calgary and Montreal. Winner at the end of that is going to be able to get, or Calgary, Edmonton, Montreal. Winner obviously is going to be trying to get Winnipeg with that second spot by finishing the third spot. So between Winnipeg, Edmonton, Montreal, Calgary, you got 2 spots available, and really everybody just does not obviously wants to make the playoffs, but does not want to play Toronto. So those top 2 spots. Right now, be Winnipeg, Edmonton, and that would be a great series. It would be cool to see Edmonton, Toronto in these playoffs. So one thing I've talked about in the show in the past is that some things that are possible this year that are not possible other years, such as traditionally interconference playoff matchups, would be really awesome to see. Specifically, like a McDavid Matthews, like Toronto Edmonton playoff round. That's something we're almost guaranteed we're never going to see unless those 2 teams make the cup in any other year. But this year, that could easily be a first or second round matchup. On that same plane would be like a Montreal Edmonton or Montreal Winnipeg or Calgary Toronto or whatever. But I think that by far the most exciting of any of those options would be Toronto Edmonton, and it's very possible. Toronto in that first spot right now, Edmonton in third. So if Edmonton kind of slides back to fourth a little bit, that would be a first round playoff matchup. In the Central Division, Tampa Bay clinging on to that first place spot. I mean, Tampa's the best team in the league. I don't think that's much of a debate. Like, they are the most talented team. They have the most points, or the second most points to Toronto. But they've also played 3 fewer games than Toronto. So I do think Tampa's the best team in the league, but Carolina's only a point behind them. Florida's only a point behind Carolina, and then Chicago is only 3 points behind them. So 36-31 from 1-4 in the Central. So, if you have a bad weekend, you can end up from first to not even having home ice. But Florida, who I've been very impressed with, Florida, clearly the second team in their state in terms of skill, popularity, success, every measurement. They have played very well. They beat Tampa Bay a few times this season already. 34 points. They're staying right in the thick of it. Looking like they're absolutely, he'd be good enough to make a playoff run. They've been in the playoff picture all year, but as we said, very tight. Those top 4. However, after the 4th spot from Chicago to Columbus, from 4th place to 5th place, 31 points to 25. So Chicago, the top 4 is pretty comfortable there, even though a couple teams, probably 3 teams, Columbus, Nashville, Dallas, were thought to be competitors for that 4th spot, who are absolutely not at this point. So Columbus in 5th spot, 6 points behind Chicago. They play the same amount of games. Nashville is 9 points behind Chicago. They've played 1 fewer game. And then there's Dallas, which is very interesting because, of course, Dallas had these COVID issues at the beginning of the year, and they started the season much later than every other team. They only have 19 points, so they're still 12 points behind Chicago, and they lost yesterday to Nashville in overtime. I mean, it's not like they're playing very well at all. They're not. Dallas, won the Western Conference last year, but they're not playing well at all. Despite that, they have only played 20 games. So, if you and Chicago's played 26, so if you give Dallas 6 games, they would have to make up 11 points in 6 games. Could they do it? Probably not. But they played so many fewer games, it's kind of hard to count them out. Past that, then there's just Detroit. Detroit with 17 points in 26 games. So I think it's pretty safe to count them out. But the Central Division is it's odd because you have these top 4 teams that are so close to, that are kind of so far apart from the next 5 or from the next 3: Columbus, Nashville, Dallas. But Chicago, I mean, I don't think Chicago is good enough to run away with the playoff spot. So I think Columbus, Nashville, Dallas really chasing there's one of those spots with Chicago, Florida, Carolina. Tampa Bay, I think, is a lot to make it, but there's so many teams that are not going away that I really think it's impossible to see who's going to win this division. Unlike the Canadian division, the North Division, which will almost definitely be Toronto. Touched on this a little bit earlier, but the East with the Islanders playing extremely well. The plus 17 goal differential, 7-2-1 in their last 10, 5-game winning streak, deservedly on top of the division there. Anders Lee, captain, been playing very well as well. The Islanders have gotten a few big wins lately. Specifically, yesterday. It was a couple of days ago. Beating the Sabres 3 times in under a week, 5-2. Exact same score, 3 straight times. I mean, it's the Sabres, but still, the Islanders, you can't control your play. And if you're winning, winning by 9 goals across 3 games, very impressive. Beating the Devils before that. Huge game coming up for them tomorrow. Islanders Bruins on Tuesday night. Tomorrow night in New York. That game, let's see. Yeah, Tuesday night at the Coliseum, Islanders Bruins. So very exciting. That'll be a tough test for the Islanders as they're looking to stay in first place in the East Division. The Caps, right behind them, 2 points back. But for Boston, Pittsburgh, and Philadelphia, who the 3 teams right behind the Caps, all within 5 points, they're going to want to take advantage of this Wilson absence. By the way, that Tom Wilson after that hit that Tom Wilson laid on Brandon Carlo, Brad Marchand, who, I mean, as if he is known as a clean player because he's literally known as the Rat, that he had said that was a bull hit. Carlo had his head down in the corner, and Wilson took a liberty on a guy that was in a vulnerable spot. So that's an effing cheap shot there, which is what Marchand told Messon during the first intermission. We lost a great player, and it's great to see him skate up the ice by himself, but he was in a bad spot, and he's hurting. That's a bad hit. Okay, fine. I mean, it was a dirty hit. It probably, as I said before, probably should have been suspended. Just the debate is how much. And I said, a few games, one or two, maybe 3. But regardless, it's a suspendable hit. He was suspended, etc. So then last night, Brad Marchand, less than 48 hours after this quote, 2-hand cross checks a player in the back of the neck. So it's just a little ironic that Marchand is all on his high horse about Tom Wilson, who, as I said, should have been suspended. Not a clean hit, but then does that 2 days later. I mean, very dangerous play. After the play was over, in front of the crease, 2-hand cross check to the neck. So Brad Marchand, we'll see if he gets any discipline for that. I doubt it, but we'll see. So Boston just 3 points behind Washington. Philadelphia tied with them, or Pittsburgh tied with them, and Philadelphia 2 points behind. And of course, as we've been saying, games played matter so much more this year, just because usually teams for the entire season are within 1, 2, 3 games played. At this point, you have some teams like Dallas who've played so many fewer games. So right now, the Islanders have played 25, Caps played 24, Boston 22, Philadelphia 22. So Boston and Philadelphia both have 3 games in hand on the division leader, and they're 5 and 7 points back. So the Islanders in first place deservedly, but not in a safe position by any means, with those more games for Philadelphia and Boston to play. And the Rangers, who have been playing better. I mean, they're not going to make playoffs. The Rangers are not good. They're a very young team. They're without Artemi Panarin due to his off-ice issues that are completely not his fault with this ridiculous accusation from Russia. But Rangers are 23 points there, so the Rangers are only 6 points out of the playoffs. They're not out of it, but there's such a low percentage chance that they make any sort of run to catch Pittsburgh, Philly, Boston, and Washington. Now looking out into the West Division, Vegas. So this division, more than any other before the season, was kind of like, we know which 3 teams are going to be top 3, and then everyone else fights for the 4th spot. Vegas first place at 33 points. St. Louis second place at 31 points. Colorado third place, 28 points. Pretty predictable. Minnesota have been hanging around, and they had the second and third spot for a while. They've fallen off a little bit. They're playing very well lately, but still in a playoff spot. That's all you can really ask for in a division like this. So San Jose, who's just been an absolute tailspin, they're pretty awful at 19 points in 22 games. Anaheim put up a fight. They've had a few overtime games not go their way, but San Jose and Anaheim, kind of the two teams that I'm convinced are definitely out of it. Like I just don't see them making a run, and these other teams faltering too much. Um, but Arizona and LA with 25 points, just behind Minnesota with 27, and so it's really a race between Minnesota, Los Angeles, and Arizona for the right to play Vegas or whoever ends up in that first spot. It's looking like it's going to be Vegas. I mean, they have the best record in the league in the last 10 games, 8-2. Mark Stone, first star of the week across the league, 10 points for him in 4 games. So Mark Stone, 2 goals, 8 assists, spectacular week. Vegas leading the way. They also have a plus 25 goal differential, which is second in the league, tied for second in the league behind Tampa Bay with 35 plus 35. So Vegas firing on all cylinders. And they are looking like they are the best team in this division, and they have a huge game tonight at Minnesota. The Knights play tonight at Minnesota, and then to two in St. Louis before coming back for the Sharks. So they have a chance to kind of make it to widen the gap significantly here. I mean, if they can get this one over the Wild, who they're better than, and then they can get a couple points in St. Louis across 2 games, and then they have 2 at home versus the Sharks, who are awful. So and then the Kings. So the Knights in the next 6 games or so could theoretically get 10, 11, 12 points. They're better than all these teams by far, other than St. Louis, who's a bit closer. But there's really no reason they shouldn't kind of widen the gap a little bit. They're up by 2 points in the division right now. I wouldn't be surprised if by March 20th or so, they're more like 7 points up or 8 points up. Colorado, they're really looking to get home ice as well. I mean, they were popular Stanley Cup team before the season. They kind of they look very good, but they just haven't been kind of good enough against these other good teams in the division. But they're going to be chasing St. Louis. One thing I want to touch on before we finish up these stats. So now, as I spoke on the Islanders earlier, Matt Barzal, Anders Lee, JG Peugeot, they're flying all over the place. They're a very deep team. But so points leader across the league, not a surprise to anyone. Connor McDavid, 43 points. Patrick Kane, 38 points right behind him. Then Leon Draisaitl, 36. Mitch Marner, 34. Mark Scheifele, 33. And Austin Matthews, 31 to round out the top 6. So really no surprise at all. Those are 6 of the best players in the league. 2 sets of teammates. And funny is the 2 sets of teammates, one on a elite team, Matthews and Marner in Toronto, and then 2 sets of teammates on a bubble playoff team in McDavid and Draisaitl. Rookie for the Calder Trophy Award, Kirill Kaprizov, still a heavy favorite for that, ahead of Josh Norris and Tim Stützle. Another set of teammates. I mean, good future for Senators, despite the fact that they're going to be bad for the foreseeable future. And Austin Matthews leading the way for the Rocket Richard with 18 goals. McDavid, racking up a lot of points, but you look at these Oilers Leafs played 3 games last week, 3 games, and McDavid and Draisaitl combined for 0 points. 3 games, 3 Leaf wins, and it's ridiculous when they have such a lack of depth that it's all on them. So if they don't score, the team is not scoring. Oilers, dropping 3 straight to kind of fall a little bit in the race there. But that was tough for them. The Oilers, they're going to get a chance to regroup coming up as they play Ottawa today. So they actually have, after this, they have 3 straight against Ottawa at home. So if they don't get, 5 points minimum, I mean, they should win those games. They are a significantly better team all the way around. But 3 games against Ottawa coming up for Edmonton. So they're really going to need to regroup after these 3 straight Leaf losses last week. Looks like that'll do it, though, for us here on NHL Low Down. I'm Jeremy Schooler, another great show, great week of hockey. So catch us next week. We'll not be having a show, actually, but catch us in 2 weeks on Spanglish Sports World, NHL Low Down, for another recap of the week that was in hockey. Until then, see you next time.